Hi, everyone. This is Jason Schreier, and I'm here with my co host,
Hi, everybody. It's Kirk Hamilton here.
Kirk Hamilton, my co host, and today we have a very special guest star. He is a former Kotaku writer, he is a Bungie staff member, and he is the director of Destiny the Taken King, which came out last week, much to my girlfriend's dismay. Everyone, so this is Luke Smith. Hi,
Hey
Luke.
everyone. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, man. Our pleasure.
How
Yeah.
are you guys feeling after the first week? You guys been playing a little bit?
Just a little. I'm feeling tired, and I haven't really been showering or eating enough. So I guess that about sums it up.
No, I want to know how you're feeling. What's the mood like over there?
I haven't been showering or eating much either.
Good.
No, we've a lot of us have just been playing the shit out of the game. I think that the mood at the studio is pretty positive. I mean, we're still just hungry and on the look for, how are we going to continue to make stuff better, honestly. Like there's no resting on the proverbial laurels over at Bungie. I for instance was out last week to play the game basically in retail in the live environment alongside friends and compatriots to see how things are going. So a bunch of us did that, and now we're back to work this week.
So, to those of the Kotaku listeners who are listening on this and aren't super familiar with the story of Destiny, Destiny came out last year. It was kind of polarizing in a lot of ways. Some people loved it, some people hated it. Even the people who loved it found a lot of issues with that. And over the past year, the folks at Bungie, the developer of Destiny, where Luke Smith works, have been patching and introducing new things and doing all sorts of stuff that improves the game in a lot of ways. And last year, the Taken King, which is basically the beginning of year 2, is what you guys call it, right?
Yep.
So Taken King came out, and that was just, it's pretty much been like unanimously positively received, right? Has anyone disliked it?
Well, I think that there's always going to be people who are unhappy or disappointed with stuff. I mean, I think that there was definitely a lot of, whinging about saying goodbye to some of people's old favorite weapons. I know people have struggled to say goodbye to some of my favorite guns, like the old Fatebringer or Vision of Confluence. We have these cool weapons, and I think that transitioning out of that has been a struggle for folks. But we hope that people have found some fun to have with a bunch of the new weapons, the foundries, stuff like that. I know in my own experience, I sort of put Fatebringer through the paces one last time in the campaign, and then put it in the vault where it'll stay for many years.
Rest in peace,
Yeah.
R.I.P. Fatebringer. We miss you, buddy. But yeah, and now so the Taken King is out. People seem to really love it. I mean, so it must be. Luke, tell us what it's like over there. Like, you guys must have been there. You must have been there last year when Destiny was received, and the reviews were not so great. What's the difference between now and then? Give us a comparison.
Well, I think that so fun fact actually, I was only there for about a week last year, right after Destiny launch, and then I had to like run home for a family health emergency, so I missed a bunch of the sort of office tone. But I think in general, Destiny for Bungie was a pretty big learning opportunity in terms of like we had a game that has a bunch of positive qualities last year, but also had a bunch of opportunities for improvement that, we had a very voracious audience who was willing to help point out those opportunities for improvement in a variety of ways. And I think that began this like learning journey that the company's been on. And another thing that I don't know if we've talked too much about, but I think last year when the game came out, like we Bungie weren't really even super confident in what Destiny was going to be. Like we were still learning about what Destiny was going to become or what Destiny could be. And our hope this year is that with the Taken King, we've shed a little bit more light on the potential of a game in the Destiny universe.
Yeah. So when did you guys actually start thinking about and developing the Taken King?
Well, Taken King was in development for much longer than people realize. We had a lot more time on the project. I personally transitioned to the project after wrapping up my work on the Vault of Glass, and that was well before. I mean, months and months and months and months before Vault of Glass ever shipped. So there are people on the project even before, I mean, well before me, like Mark Noseworthy, the executive producer's been on that project for probably the longest of anyone who was on the product when it shipped. So the catch is it's not the duration of time that we were on the project, because even last summer when the core leadership team for TTK was talking about the project and what it could be, we had some ideas of areas for improvement. Like we felt like, looking at Destiny 1 even before it came out, like we were going to have opportunities to make story better and to improve missions, and thinking about mission development differently. But we didn't know about, I mean, we didn't understand the importance of something like quests, or what we Bungie were going to learn from something like Thorn. Those things became these huge pieces of learning, and those pieces of learning could only really happen when the game was out in the wild. And I think for us, that's been something that we've had to really react to.
Something that I've noticed especially with the Taken King, it feels like you guys have learned, and I'm guessing you learned this over the last year, that you've learned that you can trust your players to figure out the craziest shit possible. And there's a lot of trust going on, I guess, with the Taken King and with players. You've made a lot of things very inaccessible in a way, but you've trusted that players will figure it out. Was that a conscious thing that you guys went after?
Yeah, it was super conscious, and I will take the blame for that, and the credit for people having a good time goes to the team. For me as a player, I think when we construct a place like the Dreadnought, a mysterious, we've called it like a inscrutable loot-filled fortress, and someone at Bungie is going to take a drink probably because I said that because of some hilarious drinking game they have about it. But I think that's exciting to me about the potential of Destiny is the opportunity to introduce problems for players that players at scale can solve. I think the raids are an example of this, where you have a problem like an encounter that's 6 players working together to sort of piece this thing out, put it together, and make progress through it. And you have a place like the Dreadnought, or an item like the Touch of Malice, which are these problems at scale that the community is going to solve and build a guide for, and then like shepherd each other through. And that, like, the experiences like that to me are so important, because it's like the reliance on other people, the reminder that the world is full of people going through similar stuff to you. Like that, I think that's one of the things that Destiny can provide. And with the Taken King, we really wanted to put some anchors in the water to provide that.
So Luke, I wanna talk a little bit about that whole timeline. I want to go through. So you guys had started the Taken King before, but when did you decide, like, hey, we're gonna overhaul the whole leveling system and change all this different stuff that people didn't like so much in the original Destiny? Can you talk about how those decisions came about?
So the original light system was, when that went out the door. We were not thrilled with it. Like, we knew when that went out the door that we were going to need to revisit it, and so that work basically began in earnest probably in like September or October of last year. Like, we had already started to work on a new proposal, the proposal that would become the sort of light 2.0 proposal that's in the game now. Like, we were working on that as early as last fall. Actually, before there was a Forever 29, we were already working on the next thing. We had like Excel versions of some of the stuff that showed up in the game. Even last summer, we were talking about switching to 3 digits and the positive reasons for why we would do that. And so we had like a pretty good idea of how we were going to pivot it. But the catch then is, if you have an idea of how you're going to pivot, you have to, one, be ready to react to the live game, because if that had gone over really well, that'd be awesome, and we would have had to make no changes, and that's like win-win for everyone. But if it didn't go over well, and we had a straw man proposal for how to pivot, then we had to look at DLC 1 and DLC 2 and say, okay, well, like, how can we sort of ease this? Like, how can we set those two DLCs up to allow for this pivot? So in DLC 2, that's why you see the introduction of the etheric light mechanic, because we were trying to get players to converge quickly at a single common level, so that, because we knew where we were going to take them next.
Can I just ask, are we going to have a use for etheric light?
Uh, I think we, like, this is a pretty common question. I need to follow up with Tyson. Tyson's the investment lead. I think we've got to do something with it. I don't think it needs to be a progression material, but I think we have to do something with it.
Yeah,
just
I
so
mean, if I
players
could
can get
like
it out of
just
their
trade it in
inventory.
for like strange coins or something, that's all I
Motes
need.
or
Just
strange
something.
coins or something. Yeah, like Just get it off your inventory screen. Yeah.
Can we just mail it to you? I think you should just accept all the etheric light and trade it in for cool stuff.
I don't know, man. I have all those old stake bets from my time on Halo that I've gotta pay out. I don't want to store everyone's etheric light too.
So Luke, is it true that DLC 1, the whole exotic revamp, making us like re-level our exotics, was that just to keep us all busy while you guys fixed the leveling system?
No, no, not at all. That was, I mean, I think that was just a huge learning moment for us. Like, I think that was a misstep. Like I think I said on some popular internet gaming forum, NeoGAF, that was not our best decision as a team, and we have to do better. So this is the thing, like we are imperfect creatures at Bungie. Like, we are gonna step in shit, and it's not like everyone is trying to do their best, and at different points along the way, we succeed and we screw up, and I'm not asking for anyone's forgiveness or anything like that, or sympathy even. Like, no one cares how difficult it is to make entertainment, but we're gonna continue trying to make entertainment.
Yeah, I mean, so the reaction we're hearing a lot from players who are disgruntled, because there are always going to be those disgruntled people, is that, yeah, Destiny's great now, but we had to pay $140 to get to that point. I'm sure you've heard that a lot. What's your answer to those folks?
Oh man, I just am not the guy to talk about business and money with. I feel like that's like when I talk about stepping and shit, I've totally learned that lesson.
I was actually we were predicting that you would say something like that, and we felt like you should be able to say that after the last
I think it's
snafu.
I think it's a great question, but like the business acumen is so far from my like very small number of gifts that it's probably not appropriate for me to talk about it.
So Kirk and Kirk, you should tell us a little bit about. So Kirk and I raided last night, and we ran into Oryx for the first time. Kirk, tell us what you thought of seeing Oryx for the first time ever.
It was cool. I guess I'm going to be vague because I bet a lot of people listening to this haven't seen Oryx yet, and I don't want to ruin that maybe for people. But I'll say that it was really cool. I had actually an inkling that that battle might look the way that it did. Just getting into it, I was like, okay, everything so far in this raid has been pretty out of control in terms of like dialed up versions of things from the last raid, so this is probably going to be something out of control. But it was out of control. That encounter, every encounter up to there, we figured out on our own in our raid team, with the exception of a few little like hidden chests that we looked up. But that encounter was finally where we said, okay, fuck this, like we're not going to be able to figure out how to do this, and started to look at answers, like just some answers to how to do things. But yeah, it's tough.
We
man.
figured out most of it. We figured out the beginning part.
Yeah, we my group of real life buddies and I played over the weekend, and we did it straight up in 2 sessions, and I don't really poke or prod those guys along at all, and I think that the ogre fight was pretty tough. I mean, that was pretty tough for us. And then we got to the final boss on our first night, and basically called it after like 2 attempts, and was like, it's like 2 in the morning. Like, people need to go to sleep. Like, we'll reconvene tomorrow. And then we put in probably 3.5 hours of work the next day and got the kill. And it's like, it's so funny. Like, I know how it all works, obviously, and it's still so damn satisfying to do it, and so damn fun to do it alongside your buddies.
It's cool. I noticed there's kind of 2 levels for us when we're doing the raid of each encounter, where we come in and it's so like, man, our raid group, we've had a few different people, but it's so about working out that communication. And there's this point at which you have to break the encounter down to all its component parts. And like, I think that veteran Destiny players have kind of gotten better at that over the last year, because we've learned the language. Like, okay, there's this item, I've got this thing on my screen, we need to like isolate things and figure out what they are. So there's this whole problem solving period. And then there's just execution. And it's interesting because you're talking about, you already knew all the problem solving stuff, so it was just execution. But even that is so challenging that it's still really satisfying to pull it off, which I think is actually, like, you guys really deserve a lot of credit for putting together encounters like that. I felt like so I pulled off the Black Spindle thing last night. I two-manned it with a friend of mine. I just did a post on it, and it was really cool in that same way, where we finished with 6 seconds left. Like, I killed the dude with my sword, and everyone I talked to had the same kind of encounter. It's like that high level of execution that's required. I know you guys, your broad answer is just we play test the shit out of everything. But how can you like? I mean, that Black Spindle challenge, it's kind of raidish, but kind of different since it's like down and dirty killing. How do you get something like that that gives everybody that like on that fine of a line between impossible and you're just gonna barely do it? Like, how can you get it that fine tuned without going over the line?
A huge part of it is just the way that the game plays. Like the game is like you're a powerful superhero, and you have it's the a lot of credit goes to the sandbox team at Bungie who makes the game feel the way that it does, and then the encounter designers. I mean, this is their job and their expertise. Like I think that I mean you're telling the kind of story about a Black Spindle that we envisioned when we conceived these secret endings for the Taken King, but the that there to that end there's also like a sea of people who are like angrily typing in all caps to me on Twitter about like it's too hard, I can't believe it, I'll never be able to do this. And so like I don't know that I don't want to say like we get it right all the time. I think that Spindle for a class of players we like nailed it. Like it's a lot of fun and it's really hard, and I think the reward is actually in this case like totally worth it. Like you're getting like a pretty high tier sniper rifle, but I do still worry that I mean I just genuinely still worry that sometimes we push things a little too hard. But what's going to happen now from something like Spindle is when Lost to Light shows up in the daily again, whenever it is, like it's going to be an event. Like when I talk about groups of humans solving problems at scale, it's going to be another problem for a group of people to solve at scale. There's going to be strategies. People are going to talk about it like it's a raid fight, and that's going to be this relationship between the community and like going to Reddit, NeoGAF, wherever Kotaku comments, wherever your chosen site is to talk about how you did it, tell stories of how you did it, and help people do it. And that last thing, help people do it, like that's like to me the next frontier for where Destiny needs to go is like how do we get groups of people together and like get them playing side by side, shoulder to shoulder, in a better way.
So Luke, how much stuff is still out there that nobody's found yet?
There's more, man. Not even don't even trip. There's more.
How much poking around are we gonna have to do every time there's a new daily?
I don't know. I think that people are just gonna start naturally poking around now. Like they're gonna start naturally sniffing around more, and there's more stuff. There's more stuff coming. There's some cool stuff coming for a bunch of the activities, and I'm certainly not going to talk too much about it now. But we've got. I mean, I've said emphatically biggest, objectively biggest raid yet, and so we've got a few more tricks up our sleeves.
So that leads me to an interesting question. So a lot of people are wondering about the future of Destiny, obviously, and it seems like last year there were two big pieces of DLC, and that's how new stuff was added to the game. But now that there's this new quest system, it seems like the game is designed for you guys to be able to trickle stuff out and add new stuff like on a weekly or even monthly basis. What's your plan for that? Are you still going to do big expansions, or are you going to deliver stuff piecemeal?
So without getting too much into the actual model, I can talk about the team structure a little bit at Bungie. So now we have like basically fully funded a live team who's got a director and a project lead, and they're going to be responsible for feeding the world with content throughout the year, and figuring out ways to like keep players engaged. And I'm not sure what I've been so like head down in Taken Kingland that I'm not sure what the plan is for announcing and talking about that more, but I imagine it's coming sooner than later with like how is all of this going to work. Like I can see some of the anxiety on the message boards about like is there an expansion pass or what's going on this year, how are we going to get new content. And we definitely are going to we're definitely the ball's in our court to start talking about that soon, but I'm just not the guy who I don't know a lot about that stuff to talk too much about the local future.
We thought you were a marketing expert. Luke Smith, marketing expert.
Oh no!
So what'll make us throw money at our screens?
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I hope that the game was appealing to folks.
Yeah, we all just kept throwing money. Yeah, well, so what's your role moving on now that the Taken King is out?
Well, I'm gonna be. I'm not really talking too much about what I'm gonna be working on next. We're keeping the core.
Ooh, that's a throwback. I'm not really talking too much. This is we're getting flashbacks of our E3 interview.
Yeah,
where Kirk and I sat down.
I think that the core Taken King team, the lead team, is we're sticking together, which is awesome. Like Bungie's really like started to shift the company into a model where we form leadership teams, and we let those teams keep working together. I am extremely passionate about the end game player experience in Destiny and strikes and raids and stuff like that, and I definitely want to continue to help and work on those areas of the game. Yeah, moving forward.
Yeah, when are you gonna remix the old raids so we can play them again?
Hey man, like I think we talked a little bit about it at E3. That's like a great idea, a good example of low-hanging fruit. I think that it would be awesome to have, some of that old year one raid gear that's infusible that you can get from drops. I think there's a lot of potential there, but nothing to announce today about that stuff.
So that's a very good
Nothing to
idea,
announce.
Jason. Good job. Good idea.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Thank you for designing the game.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, we could totally go to the Vault of Glass and like find Taken everywhere and have to kill them. That's it. I just did your job. I mean, Bungie, you're welcome. What about Trials of Osiris? Where's Trials of Osiris?
Trials is on a little bit of a hiatus right now. It is coming back. It'll be back. I don't think we've announced when it's coming back yet, and I don't think we've announced why it's on hiatus. But one of the
You can announce it right now.
one of the things that we're doing with Trials is we're looking at the reward economy and the matchmaking both to sort of make that 9-0 more prestigious, make it a little bit more difficult to achieve, and then looking at the rewards to get a new season of rewards like Trials. Yeah, Trials will be back this fall.
Oh, interesting. So you think that players should be match made against players of the same skill level? Is that the plan?
I don't think skill level is the right thing, because then if you have like the reason why skill matching wouldn't necessarily be the right thing is because you would have like the 9-0 needs to mean something consistent, and it needs to mean 9 wins against an escalating quality of opponents also chasing 9 wins. So when we talk about the way that it could work, an example is that Hearthstone arena model where you're matching based on wins or closer to based on wins. I think that would be something cool for us to pursue.
Wow, that would be intense.
Interesting. Yeah, that would be crazy.
It'd be pretty sweaty.
Yeah, so I have a couple of Crucible questions for you as a recently converted Crucible diehard. First of all, I guess my biggest question is, how do you think the 2.0 weapons balance is working so far?
I think that one thing that I think is really positive is the variety we're seeing in the primary weapon slot. So we have, actually, you know what? Let me see. While I'm doing, you'll hear me type. I'm going to try to look it up on my local machine. Let me see here. So just a sec. So yeah, I'm digging up the primary weapon popularity. And so what we have is these weapon graphs that tell us what people are using and what they're not using. And so this graph used to look like, Thorn at the top of it, like you're like Thorn, and PvE, you're like Gallahorn. And now looking at the PvP primary list, your top 3 most used weapons right now are the Last Word by a pretty sizable margin over Osiris Regime and an Answering Chord, and then in the sort of tier below that, pretty far down the list, you have Hawkmoon, Red Death, Bad Juju, and then a bunch of the weapons clump up. And so we're at least seeing a little bit more variety in what people are using in that primary slot. I think that when we like drill into that secondary slot, I think we have I think we have a little bit more work to do with the shotgun.
Well, the last word, it has to be noted, people are using because of that quest that requires you to use the last
absolutely.
word.
It's gonna be overrepresented for a little while in PvP, but then we're getting into, and actually a bunch of the weapons that you see when you look at this, like an Answering Chord is a quest reward, Suros, auto rifle. So we're still in that early phase of looking at the rewards that people are using. Like the most common. This extends again into PvE as well. Like the most common used secondary weapon right now in both PvE and PvP is the Conspiracy Theory D, which is that 300 shotgun that you get. So that's obviously gonna appear for a while until players start to get more stuff, and they can infuse that Conspiracy Theory into something else. But I think that the team has definitely talked about the need for looking at shotguns again. So we're gonna be looking at those.
Cool. So my next Crucible question is, I think everybody was excited about the new there was some discussion of better connectivity for Crucible, but in playing, there's still a lot of red barring going on, a lot of lag. People are still complaining about that a lot. It seems like it hasn't fixed that much. Do you guys have a longer term plan for the red bar stuff, the connectivity, and like making matches just run better?
Yeah, we do. We're looking at a bunch of those fixes probably for a little bit later in the year because they're much more code intensive than we're ready to do right now. But we have and we also have an additional type of matchmaking that I don't want to talk too much about, but we're looking at a time to turn that on before the code fix ahead of time to try to continue to stabilize and improve the Crucible. Uh,
Private matchmaking?
no, no, that's private matchmaking. Sounds like something else. What's
Yeah,
private?
when's that
Yeah,
happening?
that was my final question. Is are we gonna get custom matches, like private matches that we can do?
Nothing to announce about custom matches today.
Nothing to announce.
Nothing to
Kotaku
announce.
listeners, split screen listeners, you get to hear the full PR
I
experience.
mean, come on, you guys know how this goes, man. You're like, it's your second show. Like, I'm not just gonna give you a bunch of scoops for your second show.
Why
Come on.
not? That's the way we build an audience. So, Luke, what was the best scoop you got at Kotaku?
I don't even remember, man.
How long did you work at the site?
So I think that I worked at Kotaku for about 8 or 9 months. I got fired from the job I had before I joined Kotaku. I got fired while I was in the process of talking to Kotaku. It's like the only job I've ever been fired from, and
Wow.
it was like an awesome sigh of relief, basically, because I was already talking to Nick and Brian Crescente and a guy named Karosh at the time about going there, and these guys just sort of the place that I was working at, like an alt weekly in Detroit, like a Real Detroit Weekly, or it was like Real Detroit Weekly, Metro Times, like you probably have something like that in your areas. But yeah, they dumped me just as I was getting ready to get started at Kotaku, and then I was at Kotaku I think for like 8 or 9 months of just like solid Warcraft play and writing. I mean, this was like my time at Kotaku was basically like the peak of my World of Warcraft obsession, where I would basically wake up in the morning around 9, write all my stories for the morning, like write everything. I don't know how it works now, but I would write all my stories in the first like 2 hours or so, get everything sorted out, like set the post timers, go back to sleep, wake up again at like 3, make sure nothing's totally fucked on the internet, and then just
Wow.
log in, like go get Taco Bell and log into Warcraft and just go nuts until like 3 or 4 in the morning, and that was it. Like, and then I like made money, like had a like made had a made a living doing that for a
So
while.
that was back when Kotaku and Gawker Media as a whole was paying per post, right?
They were paying per post, and yeah, I mean, I'm sure if I sign anything, it's like expired by now. They were paying per post, and then at that point, you bonused, like you bonus on traffic too.
Wow.
Right. Yeah, man. Things are different now. We get
Yeah,
salaries and
I mean,
benefits.
I mean, that's incredible. Like I had like the government hunting me down for tax money for when I was like self-employed, and just to give you context for the time window, by the time when I started at Bungie, I ended up with like a signing bonus that I basically just had to use immediately to pay off the feds for like for like old taxes, because I just was like, when was I gonna have like 5 grand in scratch to put together? Because when I moved to San Francisco to work at One Up, I had like 11 grand saved or something
Oh man.
from my days at Kotaku, of which some large percentage was money that was supposed to go to the government, because when you're self-employed, you got to pay them quarterly or some shit. I obviously
Yep.
don't know how it works, and then I burned
You
through
know
all of
that the
that.
headline of this article is going to be Destiny's director got chased down by the government.
Great, that's great. Yeah, that'll be great. So then when I went to One Up, I had like, like 11 grand in savings, and I like a freshly totaled car that I drove across the country, and then and I burned through all of that in my time at One Up, and like basically when I was like leaving One Up, I left with nothing. like like
Oh man. Yeah, so wait, so when did you start at Bungie?
so I started at Bungie in May of 2007, May 7th.
Okay, so you've been there
Yeah.
for a while.
Yeah, I've been there for a long time. Yeah.
And you were working on the Halo games, and then when did you start working on Destiny?
So I was working. So when they hired me, I was like writing jokes for the internet. I was like writing jokes and hosting the podcast. And less than a year into that, I started working on some systems work for Halo Reach that the creative director Marcus Lato and a producer that I used to work with named Alan Murray, Alan sort of tipped me off to doing it, and I got really interested in that and started working on the stuff that would become the Armory, and saw that ended up transitioning into game design during Reach, and then after Reach, basically moved directly onto Destiny. And originally, I was working on stuff like a bunch of stuff that's not in the game yet, like and who knows when it will be. But started off working on the social team, and then
Wait, you started working on it? So when was this? When you were working on stuff that isn't in the game yet?
This is I mean, this is like a deep cut back in probably 2011 and a half. It was, I mean,
How is it that stuff you worked on back then still isn't in the game?
because a lot of the stuff that you're working on in that earliest phase of pre-production is just like words in OneNote. Like it's not like it's like design ideas, specs, like
Ah.
goals. It's not like a piece. It's not like a physical. It's not even a piece of UI. It's like at that point it's just a dream. And then as we like started to discover what Destiny was going to become, we like continued to move people around to the company, and then I settled in. I settled in as the raid lead, and then that's been. I mean, that was sort of where it all. That's where like a bunch of stuff changed, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, did they give you the position of director of Taken King because people like the raid so much?
Uh, I think that it was. I think that that was probably. I think that the quality of the Vault of Glass when we were assessing it in development was probably a part of it. I think that some of it was just. I had a real fire and passion for Destiny, and pretty opinionated, and I don't know. I don't really know why they. I mean, why the. Yeah, I'm probably not the person to ask why there's
You're
a vote
supposed
of
to
faith
say,
in
"'Cause I'm
myself.
awesome."
I mean, but even then, it's like the Vault of Glass is a thing that I'm super happy with. But that was the product of a bunch of people. I mean, we hired the team. We hired a bunch of elements for the team of the Vault of Glass, like while we were building it, and like each of those individuals who joined the team, Jake, Gavin, Brendan, like these guys, like they were all like really important pieces of the puzzle that like came in like fit exactly how we hoped, and it was an awesome team effort. So while I oftentimes feel like I get a lot of the like praise for it, like everything we do over at Bungie is because like a bunch of people work super fucking hard to make it happen. So yeah, that I mean that's why I'm never going to be good at answering the question like why would they pick me? I don't know, man. Like the answer like I care a lot doesn't really matter because like a bunch of kids on the internet care a lot too, right?
You could hire all the kids too. You could hire those 14-year-olds who call each other like racial slurs on Xbox Live because they
Yeah,
care.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
So were you the lead on the new raid too, the Oryx raid?
Not really, no. Actually, I worked with the team on it, but I had such broad directorial responsibilities that I didn't really get to be the lead for anything.
So yeah, so talk us through what when making the Taken King was like. We touched upon this a bit earlier, and so you got started before Destiny even came out. Um, but like, when did you make the decisions that you made over the course of developing Taken King? Like, walk us through the timeline of it. Was everything finalized, and when did you say, hey, we need to change this, we need to change that, we need to change the leveling system, we need to make year two weapons matter way more than year one, et cetera, et cetera.
So I think that the we had talked as a franchise team about the year one, year two transition, probably as early as, last winter, like trying to understand what was going on and how we would get people, how we would like move the weapon game forward because we had so many outlier weapons like that were, like basically infinitely powerful and would always be good. And so there was a piece of learning, and I definitely take it on the chin for the vault weapons being so friggin' good that you like were always tempted to just pull them out and use them. And so like an example of the year transition, yeah, weapons conversation was about, well, what were the mistakes that we made? What are things that we can learn from? And that those mistakes really get cataloged, in DLC 1, DLC 2, like, we like the mistakes of the Vault of Glass weapons being so powerful is really fully realized in the second DLC where, agnostic of the drop rates, which I think the drop rates for the primaries are too low from Skull Loss, and I think the team, like we all understand that at Bungie, uh, those weapons still like outshone those weapons were still outshone by the Vault of Glass stuff. So like it becomes this like, okay, well, like we can't peg the meter to 10 the whole time for everything. And we have to be smarter about the way that we like divvy up talents. And I think that the sandbox and the investment and rewards teams have really like learned and grown and are putting stuff together in a way more interesting way. And something like Reforging, which was a new addition for DLC 2, like when we saw the effects of that in PvP, like, these combinations that we knew are powerful, like shot package and knee pads on a shotgun or something is an awesome combination. And when that was just going to drop randomly, like we were okay because you wouldn't see, every Fellwinter's lie in the game wouldn't have that. And so reforging meant every Fellwinter's was going to have that. And that, led to this sort of corruption of the PvP game and the way that was playing. And so those are like very microcosmic examples of things that we had to watch and learn and develop and like learn from while we were developing the Taken King to see how these things were changing in the wild. As far as like missions and things go, I think the mission design, like we philosophically we wanted to create missions that had a little bit more context and had a little bit more. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like we're making a friggin' story game. Like I think that the Naughty Dog guys make amazing story experiences, but like we were definitely struggling as Bungie to create experiences that had context, the context for why you're doing it, the context for why the people are talking to you, what's important. And so bringing a giant villain to the world in Oryx and his own like flagship, like that actually gave us the setup for the universe that we needed, and then we could drive everything against that. And that was just one of the things that we talked about doing last summer. And obviously a bunch of plans continue to change because you're making the damn thing. But like that was an area where we stuck to our guns pretty well.
Yeah, what about the level design variety? Like, obviously, the Taken King has levels with sneaking and picking up relics and all sorts of things that aren't go shoot waves of enemies, but Destiny Year 1 did, which makes me think, as an outside observer, that this was very much a reaction to Year 1. But how much of that was planned from the beginning?
Oh, I think that some of it's a reaction to Year 1, and some of it, frankly, is just about like a different aesthetic. The you know the sneaking mission is a cool idea, a simple twist. Like it's not like, did we make best in breed stealth? Like no, absolutely not. Did we make like a cool little, we hope a cool little like 7-8 minute palette cleanser that finishes with a cool big battle? Like yeah, that's cool. It feels different. The context for it, we try to make the context make sense, and some of that I think just comes from, I hope, the same philosophy that we've tried to bring to the raids in Destiny, which is like, hey, the X or square button is for reloading. Like that's its purpose is to reload, and like we want to build the experiences around the action game and doing cool stuff in the action game, and less around the importance of the ghost, and twisting the ghost into more of that sort of like purveyor of lore, like scan stuff electively. We've still got some stuff for the ghost to do too.
Yeah, and I mean, I think everyone would agree that you guys are totally on the right track. And like, I mean, I'm like, Kirk and I are playing, and we're like incredulous at how much cool shit there is to do now, and how much like how interesting everything is in a way that it wasn't before. But on the other hand, and this must have been something you guys talked about, Year 1 players are kind of screwed. And this has been a point of contention for a lot of people on the internet, in that if you bought the game, and it's DLC, if you spend $100 on Destiny right now, you are locked out of the Nightfall, you're locked out of the Heroic, you can't do some of the PvP modes other than those legacy playlists. You guys must have been cognizant of that when you ship the game. How do you react to someone who says, hey, why'd you leave me behind?
I mean, the reactions to that stuff. The frustration is not surprising to us. I think that we didn't do a great job of explaining that ahead of time, and in fact like needed to do a better job of explaining it. And I think that we also haven't done a great job presentationally of explaining, like, what is content that players own and what's programmed content, like what is things that are subject to change. Like everything, like the director, that main piece of UI, everything on the director looks alluring, tempting, and at relative parity, and doesn't feel like it's scoped to a specific release. And I think that some of this just tilts into like, well, what's our future potential? How are we going to make this stuff better going forward? I think that the expectation that we would create two unique, like distinct end games is probably an expectation far beyond what we're going to achieve. Like if players don't buy the game, and they bought the DLCs, they don't buy Taken King, then they've got a bunch of the Year 1 end game that they can do, but the programming and stuff is going to change, and the program is going to move forward.
Yeah, I think it's a business question again, also, where like people get so much stuff with the Taken King that they're like, wait a minute, why did I pay $20 for all that Dark Below when that was just like 3 story missions and a raid or whatever? But yeah, but that's not a question for you. That's a question for Activision. Those bean counters. So the other big thing people are talking about, and Kirk, you wrote about this, is the whole 3 of coins thing and the exotic duping. And what's up with that, Kirk? You were writing about it, right?
Yeah. So I have some specific nerdy questions for you, and we can start with that. I don't know. Well, I guess so did you do the 3 of coins exploit, Luke?
I definitely had I don't know about you guys, man, but I came home from work that day and I had like an emergency missive in the tower that like there was a uprising in the House of Winter and this guy Draxus needed to be killed over and over and over again. And so I had to get there, and I had to get there on my Titan and my Hunter for a while. Like it just
so you abuse the game.
It felt really important to check it out. Well,
Luke Smith, cheater in Destiny.
Well, here's the thing. Like, I mean, people. I think there's this. I mean, one thing I do want to clear up is people talk about it, and they like. I think a bunch of the stories said like exploit, ruining the game, and it's like no. Like we actually like some of this is the spirit of that generosity. Like we actually want the game to get more generous. We want you to have more options to choose from. Like every exotic piece of armor in the game can roll random talents. So like I have like 3 different Alpha Lupi chests for my Hunter. None of them are exactly what I want, right? Like none of them are even close to the perfect setup. Scout rifle and void armor for anyone who's curious. For what I'm looking for, I don't have one. I don't believe it exists because I've never seen one. But I think people were so shell shocked by like seeing gold stuff drop that they were like, it's an exploit, it's ruining the game. And we knew the 3 of coins we knew that they were hot. I think an idyllic implementation of them, which we certainly didn't achieve this time around, an idyllic implementation was going to be much more like, you pop them and go into the strike playlist, Vanguard Normal or Vanguard Heroics and just battle. Because like I think the fun way to do it is not to like rocket yourself and kill Draxus over and over. The fun way to do it is to like kill bosses doing stuff that you would do anyway because it's good for some parallel progression, and then get a higher chance of exotics. Like the spirit of the idea, I think is excellent, and I think the execution of it, like they came out of the gate a little hot, and today a hot fix went out that brings them down into line a little bit more, and we'll go from there. But I didn't want to have us like open the floodgates and then just turn it back to 0. Like the game's about like going out into the wild and finding loot, killing monsters with your buddies, and like having a great time with your friends. Like we have like if you really want to get into some like deep long form exotic chase, like it's there. Like there's work to do. Like I finished my Touch of Malice this week. Like there's stuff to do that's going to take you time, and there's stuff to discover. But for a bunch of these items that were that people got by like just like hate fucking Draxus into oblivion, like this other positive thing was like a lot of the stuff that people got was stuff that was available in the kiosk. And if you think back to the week before when people had all this anxiety about legendary marks, like part of the reason they had the anxiety about legendary marks was because they didn't understand the way the drop tables were going to go. They didn't understand the way that the game was going to escalate your light as you just naturally played, and then they had this kiosk like taunting them with year 2 exotics for legendary marks, so those marks become really important. Then the following week you have this thing show up with the exciting new 3 of coins that then actually helps alleviate some of that stress in the legendary marks economy, and because you've found some of those old exotics. And I think that those 2 things like work together in a really, to me, they work together in a really good way to like make it exciting to be in Destiny right now, to make it exciting to be, hunting for loot and replacing your old favorites. And like my characters right now are sitting on 180 marks, and I'm probably buying Red Death this afternoon or before this weekend, because I'm going to probably take it into the raid for a very particular moment that I'm responsible for in my raid group.
So, okay, very specifically about exotic engrams, because I'm super curious about this because of the whole duping thing. When does an exotic engram decide what it's going to be? Is it at the Cryptarch or is it when it drops?
It's a true story, man, and I'm not ducking this. I genuinely don't know the answer to that question.
Okay, that's disappointing. I thought you would know because I'm really curious.
I asked a question about them as well because like my buddies and I uncrated like something like 3 invectives in a row or something, and I'm like, Bungie, please, hi Destiny, I'm Luke Smith, the creative director on you. Why did you just give me 3
Well,
invectives?
I guess
Like,
it's good to know that you were disappointed too. Okay.
but like and then my buddies and I like started talking about like, okay, well, what are our theories? Like maybe if I like don't decrypt them all together, like so I'll spread it out and like okay, I'll decrypt one and I'm gonna like walk around the tower and like decrypt a blue or something to see if like okay maybe that'll reset it. And so I'm like I'm right there beside everyone, going through a
Someone's
bunch
got
of
to
the
know
same
though.
stuff.
Someone wrote the code, right? You've got to have
Yeah,
someone in the building you can ask.
yeah, and there are definitely engineers on the investment team who know the answer to this question.
I love the idea that Bungie is so inscrutable that even the director of the game doesn't know how things work.
Well, yeah, we're mostly at like the leadership level. We're looking for the feeling, not necessarily the exact implementation. Although I will say I did know the exact implementation of the 3 of coins. That was something that I definitely wanted to make sure I understood. So
Okay, next question.
depends.
Can you get a blue engram to decode above 300?
Not currently.
Okay. Next question. Do you think the Titan subclass is OP in Crucible? The Sunbreaker.
I am waiting on the data because we also track we also track the data for the subclasses. Let me see if I just can bring it up, and I don't know if it's
Luke
in
has
here
this
yet.
entire database
Just
of
right
all the
there.
answers to everything, just like on his computer.
This is so anecdotally, I would say I'm an okay Crucible player. There are many people on the internet who will stomp me into the ground when I play. Um, I think that for a player of my skill level, I probably am overperforming as a Sunbreaker Titan currently.
I think I would agree
Like
with you on that because I'm getting like
like the
pentakills that I've never gotten before with that super.
the yeah, the kill percentage that I'm currently my like kills per super is pretty hot for me. It's interesting though, like looking at the um yeah, so I have the numbers and they're it's not as spread out as you'd expect actually.
I've actually
So
kind of found that. I was surprised when I started playing the other classes and people started to get their head around the supers. Like people have learned to run away from Sunbreakers and like hunters have learned how to, use the void bow on them. And I've actually started to notice it's not as OP as I thought it was.
yeah, I mean, you get a lot of damage reduction though, man. Like if I feel like a tank walking around, like
Yeah.
I activate the hammer and I'm like, yep, who's gonna mess with this?
Yeah, cauterize. It's that cauterize ability is really intense. Um,
Did you guys do the chaperone
yeah,
quest
I
line?
just finished the final step of it last night.
So how did you do your last word? Um,
It's funny. I started it out by doing it cheesy, and I was just equipping it and popping my super, and I got to about 30%, and then I thought, you know what? I'm just gonna try this the real way, and started playing with the last word, which is a gun I never really liked, and
yeah.
I did really great. I finished it in 2 matches. I just destroyed people because
Wow.
the last word is an awesome gun, and so it actually worked really well. It got me into the last word.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, Luke. So I'm going through. We have to talk about this some Crucible quest issues. Like I'm going
Yeah.
through the game, and it's like okay, this is amazing. They've gotten rid of all the grinding. Everything is so cool now. This is such an interesting game. This is what Destiny always should have been. And then I see this Crucible quest line to unlock the weekly Crucible bounty, and I'm like, fuck you, Destiny. Whose idea was it to make us go through all that before we can do the weekly bounties?
Hey, I'm not. I mean, I can share a story from my own experience. The I did that quest line last week, the first week the game came out, and it basically feels like an entire like campaign plus worth of like hours of Crucible, which is pretty intense. And it only unlocks for sort of that one character who you do it on, and this is
Yeah.
Yeah.
this is definitely something that we are aware of and we are talking about at the office, and we're definitely going to continue to have conversations about that. I don't actually know the answer to how we're going to be addressing it, but this was yeah, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, and I'm gonna do this for the future war cult, and now the dead orbit, now new
Oh
monarchy.
yeah. So wait, so as a public service announcement to our readers, should people like are you going to address it in the short term? Should people just not do that quest because you might come out with something soon?
No, I don't think it's going to be in the like the super short term. I because we just put out an update today, and I think I don't know if it's in our next one, but our next update's a couple few weeks away. So our next planned update, like who knows, like if we'll have to hotfix something. So
Okay.
if you want to get those nightfall tier rewards, I would bang that out on one
Oh
of your
man,
one
you're
of your
such a
characters.
jerk.
Well,
Such a jerk.
yeah, I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm just trying to give you as much information as I can.
So Kirk, do you still have rapid fire questions?
Yeah, I have a couple more. I'm wondering about something related to stats and guns. So there are these stats that are in the gun descriptions that say things like accuracy and aim assist, or people talk about AA on guns, but those aren't listed in the gun's description. Meanwhile, you've got these bars that don't have numbers. Why aren't the stats on weapons clearer than they are?
Yeah, I think like in the spirit of like still trying to figure out what Destiny is. I think there's like how much information is enough to provide. Like there are some of the words you use there are vague, and I think it's hard for players to know what the right decision is to make when they're even picking a scope on a gun, for instance. And I think this is an example of like one of the examples of we've got to figure out what are the choices we want players to make when they look at weapons, and how can we arm them with better information to do so, like we did with the whether people like the analog or digital nature or not. You at least know now when you have 300 strength, your melee is going to come back every 24 seconds. You have that human relative information. I think we've got to continue to try to do a better job of that across the game.
Cool. How do you think heroic matchmaking is going? Because there are a lot of complaints, and I've found this too when I try to solo the heroic Vanguard playlist, that people just bail on some of the strikes because they're too hard, or they require teamwork since you've actually made them more interesting and more mechanically, varied. How do you think the matchmaking is going on that with, just how are your numbers looking on your end with people dropping out and that kind of thing?
So true story, man. I have the email right here. I sent it this morning to our UR guy, asking for the average, like asking for a bunch of data. Like we have a shitload of data about strikes, and in the last 2 days, I had a conversation with the matchmaking guys because I think that we have an opportunity I have to dig into it more, but to improve join and progress times for strikes. Like I feel like through my entire Destiny experience as a player, whenever someone drops from my game, it's usually not till the boss where someone shows up. Like it just feels like it
Well,
takes
it's at
that
the
long.
unless
again,
it's on Fallen Saber, then it's at the war set. Everybody drops out at the war set on that map.
Yeah, and so the war set segment can be pretty challenging. I think that there's a because of the variability, right? Like there's hard versions of everyone and easy versions of every race. So you could get taken normal, fallen normal, hive normal, and then there's hard versions of all of them. And the hard versions of each one are really, really damn hard. But for the strike data, we're gonna be analyzing a bunch of stuff this week, like time to complete, fire team kills, deaths, wipes, heat maps for death locations, and then looking at that stuff, looking at that data, and figuring out like, okay, well, what are some changes we can make to get these things in line so that there's not an outlier. Like anecdotally, I experienced something like Undying Mind lasting, roughly 6 minutes longer than Fallen Saber or whatever. So how are we going to address those things?
Well, Undying Mind is a good name for it because that dude will not die. It takes forever.
Yeah, and we actually it's funny. We hit his health. We hit his health over the summer too, and I'm worried that we just didn't hit it hard enough. So I think that's another candidate for a way to shorten that thing.
What about the idea of adding like a veto tool for matchmaking playlists? Like if you see what you're going to be doing and people can vote to veto.
Yeah, that's an awesome idea. We certainly had vetoing in Halo multiplayer, and I think that figuring out a way to improve that in some way under the hood would be good. In lieu of a veto UI right now, which is probably not in the immediate future for us.
Okay. And last quick question is, I know reforging was initially introduced during the Iron Banner, and I'm guessing there's an Iron Banner coming pretty soon. Is reforging just gone, or is it maybe going to come back in some form or another?
I think it is maybe going to come back in some form or another, but it will not be the way that it was for DLC 2. Like we don't want people like forging death implements at their whim. So
Okay, yeah, I think that was a good call. Actually, I became really unhealthily addicted to re-rolling this Hopscotch Pilgrim to the point where it was the
yeah,
only reason I was playing the game, and it was weird. I didn't like how I was playing the game during that period. So
I spent a lot of time doing this exact same thing with my Hopscotch Pilgrim, man, trying to make it like as close to perfect as I could make
yep,
it, and I'm
yep.
just like, that's just not a fun way to.
No,
That's not a fun way to play. Like
gotta
a
get some
weapon
weapon
like the.
parts. So I'm gonna get to 7 and grind for Glimmer to buy a bunch of guns from from Brother Vance so I can break them down. Yeah, it's not a great loop.
Yeah.
So Luke, I have an important question for you, and I
Okay.
think we're gonna have to wrap this up soon. So we probably have time for like a little more, a couple more questions maybe. But important question: how much of Destiny's evolution is because you listen to Kotaku?
Oh, I mean, I've read all the articles the whole way, like the ones that bring a smile to my face and the ones that bring a tear to my eye. So yeah.
What does Bungie think of our Destiny, the first lines of our Destiny stories?
So I'm not gonna speak as the company man here, but I think they're hilarious. Like I think
Oh well,
I really like them. I think that I've enjoyed them. I think that's cool, man. I like that. I like that stuff.
it's kind of showing the evolution of Destiny, the
Well,
roller coaster
yeah,
ride.
yeah. I mean, I think there's I feel like at some point you guys like have cataloged a bunch of them or showed a bunch of them together. You really can watch you can sort of like watch the wave of your satisfaction or dissatisfaction.
It's true.
Like,
Yeah, so another important question. Will you play Trials with us and stream it on Kotaku with us?
so I will probably not do that actually. I
Wow.
and so here's why though. I don't like to play and talk at the same time. Like there's been like some real internet excitement about the notion of me playing a raid and talking about it at the same time, and that's
Mhm.
like, why would you ask like a would you ask like a race car driver to describe what racing is while he's driving? Like, no, he's gonna crash and burn, and then people are just gonna look at it and go like, that guy doesn't know how to play the game.
That is not a good
Yeah,
metaphor.
I don't buy that at all, man. I think you should come
Hey,
play with us. You wouldn't even have to talk. You could just be quiet.
yeah, but the yeah, probably I probably won't be streaming and
So
playing Destiny at
disappointing.
the same time. Here's the other thing. Like I have, this like to even talk for an hour and to stay contained and not swear a bunch and stuff. Like that's like a miracle for me in general. And when I'm playing the game, my eyes glaze over like a shark and I just don't know what's going to come out or go into my mouth while I'm playing. So it's a really dangerous, high potential for career limiting moves.
Well, we do not want to see you get reprimanded by the internet again, so we won't let you do that. But so okay, Luke. So we're gonna have to wrap this up.
All right.
Final question.
Yeah.
Is there anything you can tell the listeners, the Kotaku listeners out there, about the future and like what kind of stuff we're gonna get? I mean, a lot of us have been theorizing, and I know we talked about this a little bit earlier. People have been theorizing that like you guys will slowly add quests over time. What can you tease us? What can you tell us about the future?
Well, one of the things, last Monday on the 14th, I had to get up in front of the Bungie team and talk about some of the stuff with the Taken King. And the last thing I talked about in my like basically addressing of the team was this notion of pivoting. And so when I talk about pivoting, what I mean is looking at experiences we've created, whether they were DLC 1, DLC 2, and the Taken King team really, trying to be willing to pivot. And so, looking at the live game and our plans and looking at, where we're going next, and now looking at people's reactions to the Taken King, like, we need to continue to pivot and react to the positives and negatives that players are going to uncover about the game. So, without saying anything specifically, like I think that it really is the like keep talking, like keep writing, keep posting on the forums. Like we read, we may not always respond in the inform way, but we're paying attention, and this period right now for Destiny is really exciting to me because we have introduced so many problems at scale for players to like piece together and solve and work out, and we want to see how that continues to go over and informs and influences our decisions going forward. Like the last 24 hours, like when I woke up yesterday morning and I knew that yesterday was going to be a day with potential to see the way that people reacted to the Black Spindle experience and the positive reactions to that, and that definitely is something that is going to be a piece of learning for us, and we have to look at, how can we do more stuff like that. I mean, the development of the Taken King was pretty intense for us at Bungie, and we made a lot of bets to make some pretty big changes in the game, and it seems like some of those are bearing fruit. And we've introduced a bunch of different experiences and types of experiences, hopefully, into the game that people like, and the things they don't like, we'll iron out and try to do better the next time.
All right. Well, you guys did an awesome job. Thank you so much. Luke Smith, thank you for being here. This is Kotaku Split Screen. Kirk Hamilton, Jason Schreier signing off.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.